Let's go see what's in store next. Oh boy. No, but I think I might know which one this is. Yeah, it's this one.
Monster. You damn monster!
Oi! You're not allowed in here! Evie! Get a hold of yourself! Go! Out!
Who is she? Tell me quickly!
Tell you? By what right? I am an officer of the law. I am not a member of your secret organization!
Listen to me! Jacob knows.
No, you listen to me. I cannot cover for you much longer. All the evidence points to your brother, your order, you. You need to deliver the Ripper's head on a spike soon, or I'm afraid there'll be nothing to stop my men from arresting you in his stead.
You'll have his head, even if it costs me mine.
A young unfortunate. By far the youngest, at 25. Miss Kelly was found dead here at 10:45 this morning. Her throat had been cut, and her whole head and body mutilated in a fashion which defines the word hideous.
The kettle is still warm. He removed her organs, her heart, her dignity. You want me to see you as she did? Imagine the terror she felt. Do you hurt women just to prove you're a man, Jack? That is a lot of blood.
The blood stain had a strange edge on one side, suggesting an object like the splatter.
I can't make sense of these markings from this position.
There's blood on the door, and a strange symbol that resembles the one above the body. Police must have removed the door when they arrived.
What's this? Jack must have left these markings for me.
My gift to you, Miss Fry, and more to come, unless you do as Jack says. Follow the trail of blood through the looking glass.
Jack wants me to return to the scene of his first crimes. I will do as you say, Jack, until I find you and send you to your own special hell.
What did you discover?
A message for me. The monster is going to lead me right to him, Inspector. I must return to the locations of the Ripper's first crimes.
Don't let your fury blind you, Miss Fry. I would not lose you, too.
If I do die, Inspector, I will take the Ripper with me. Annie Chapman was murdered near a cemetery in Whitechapel.
Back we go.
I'm going to have to scare off this lot if I want to investigate in peace.
You're boring me now. Someone get up from behind!
Oh, don't kill anyone. Oh yeah, it's still active, right, okay. I forget the Karas doesn't kill people, it just incapacitates them. What's a rumbling here?
Someone fought here.
The Ripper's first strike did not kill her outright. It was a deep wound that bled profusely.
This is where Jack ripped the life from Miss Chapman's breast. The second victim of his hideous crimes. He cut off her ring finger. So where is the ring?
The Ripper wounded her again here. She lost a lot of blood, but the injuries were still not fatal. Jack let her flee, only to hunt her down again and again, prolonging her agony.
Where does it lead?
Footsteps suggest she turned around here, and given the amount of blood loss, she paused for a moment before fleeing again. Did she stop to face Jack? Or to find some place to hide a clue? A third powerful strike, which still did not slay her instantly. Jack must have relished her terror as she watched her life slip
Damn
away.
it. Yet another one.
She fell here exhausted, terrified, and alone. There was no merciful final blow. Jack must have watched as her life drained away in a pool of blood.
Her assassin ring must be here somewhere. Jack wanted to be sure I'd find these rings.
Inspect the bird nests. Oh, decipher Jack's message.
What kind of creep cannot protect its own?
This message was intended first for my brother. Catherine Eddowes was murdered in a small square close to the train tracks.
Yeah, these are all... yeah. We've only seen like, the last two, I think. Jacob's been trying to investigate. Ooh, train. Why is the train stopped? I don't know.
Months ago, the president of our vigilance committee received half of poor Miss Edo's kidney, and the Ripper still runs free. Who will catch him? What are the police doing to protect the poor residents
I must find the
of
location where
Whitechapel
Jack
from
murdered
this
his other
assassin?
victim.
What has the government done?
She was found here on her back with her throat slit and one ear cut off. Her intestines had been drawn out and displayed by some fiendish design.
Sin and impurity in our city. We shall petition our most gracious Majesty, Queen Victoria. But what if our petition falls on deaf ears? Who will avenge the blood of these unfortunate victims? I say we must take the law into our own hands. Who is with me? Months ago,
I won't.
the president of our vigilance committee
Please, don't touch me! I'll smash your face in!
Yeah, well, it incapacitates him.
For the love of Christ!
That is a lot of blood.
Edo's was back to the wall here, bleeding profusely. Jack's cut was deep, perhaps to the abdomen.
Signs of a struggle.
Bloodstains and handprints suggest Miss Edo's was fleeing on her hands and knees.
This is where Miss Edo's breathed her last.
Jack ended Miss Edo's...
Raided by Jack. He wanted to punish my brother.
throwing her to the ground to perform his macabre ritual mutilations.
I should follow these traces.
She leaned over that wall in a desperate attempt to flee the Ripper.
Where does it lead?
She jumped over these crates with Jack on her heels. Her wounds were not so deep as to prevent escape yet.
You monster. You murdered every assassin my brother turned against you and your insane creed.
The amount of blood loss suggests Jack cut Lizzie Stride's throat here, killing her instantly. Kate Eddowes had time to flee.
More blood splatter.
Small droplets of blood, but not from the fight. Splatter may come from a small blood-covered object thrown from this position.
Blood splatters.
Splatter was too small to have come from the victim's wounds. Droplets near the haystack are barely visible, suggesting a blood-covered object may have rolled or bounced here from another location.
Her assassin ring must be here somewhere.
Come on.
Yeah, just put on the wall. Like that.
Jack must have left her assassin's ring here somewhere. Her assassin ring must be here somewhere.
Oh, there, I aim.
That's what that blood-covered object is.
Yeah.
It's a hay bale.
Finding a ring in a haystack. No use poking around the edges. This is going to require a closer look.
So jump in, Evie, and find a dead body.
Her assassin ring must be here somewhere.
Was it
Two
The Sims?
assassin's rings. Jack murdered 2 women here. 2 of Jacob's initiates.
All my wealth, all my success, it really means nothing in the end.
How many more must die before you see the truth? P.S. Your brother didn't listen, so I gave him a double lesson. Your creed failed them, as it failed my mother.
Jack lived around here with his mother as a boy. That's where he's leading me. For Jack, only his mother's death counts as murder.
That was from earlier in the game. Not necessarily.
What is this place? The Ripper didn't murder anyone here. What?
I was born here, survived the madhouse and learned from the best, until he betrayed me. Come test your creed against mine.
Go to Jacob! Run, Jack!
The murder of Jack's mother marks the day that the Ripper was born. And he blames my brother. Blames the Creed for failing him. What's happening to me?
I should thank you, Evie. Jacob inspired my acts by his treachery, but it's your meddling that inspired today's masterpiece.
He's inside my head.
Where was Jacob when Starrick's men gutted my mother? Where was he when they dragged me to the madhouse?
Am I losing my mind?
What kind of creed cannot protect its own? A dead creed, that's what.
Face me, you monster! Control yourself, Evie.
Jacob freed me from the madhouse riddled by fear. He saw something in me and made me assassins. But I grew to see his weakness and knew what I had to do. You have made me immortal.
No! Please! Please!
The madhouse. Lambeth Asylum. Jack lures me through the looking glass.
What the heck was that? 8 new entries?
All of the assassins.
The body of Mary Ann Polly Nichols was found at 3:40 a.m. in a gateway in Bucks Row, Whitechapel, on Friday, August 31st, 1888. Polly is generally believed to have been the first of Jack the Ripper's victims. The woman's throat had been slashed so savagely her head had almost been cut from her body. The cuts must have been caused by a long-bladed knife, moderately sharp, and used with great violence. No blood was found on the breast, either of the body or the clothes. There were no injuries about the body until just above the lower part of the abdomen. There were several incisions running across the abdomen. The injuries were made from left to right and might have been done by a left-handed person. All the injuries had been caused by the same instrument. Her fingers bore the mark of rings, which were presumed lost or stolen. Mary Ann Polly Nichols was buried on Thursday, September 6, 1888, but for all we know, the woman who lies in the grave may be the assassin who replaced her. Perhaps Jacob gave the real Polly enough money to have lived out her life elsewhere and in peace. The body of Elizabeth Stride was found on 1 a.m. on September 30th in Dutchfield's yard, off Berner Street, now Heinrich Street, in Whitechapel, just an hour before the Ripper's fourth victim was discovered. The fact that her throat had been cut, but the rest of her body had not been touched, led to speculation that her killer had been interrupted. The deceased had a silk handkerchief round her neck, and it appeared to be slightly torn. The throat was deeply gashed, and there was an abrasion of the skin. There was a clear-cut incision on the neck. The cut was very clean and deviated a little downward. The arteries and other vessels contained in the sheath were all cut through her. Her fingers bore the mark of several rings, which were presumed lost or stolen. From here on in, the Ripper is public enemy number 1, and Home Office begins to consider offering awards for his capture and arrest. At approximately 1:45 p.m. on September 30th, Catherine Eddowes' lifeless body was found in Mitre Street. She was the Ripper's third canonical victim, and the second victim in what is sometimes called the double event. The reference comes from the Saucy Jack postcard, which was received on October 1st at the Central News Agency. The attack on Catherine Eddowes has been brutal in the extreme, as if the Ripper was frustrated by the interruption of his work on Lizzie Stride. Eddowes' throat had been cut. She had been ripped open, and her intestines had been pulled out and laid over her shoulder. The killer had cut deep V-shapes in her cheeks and eyes. The tip of her nose had been sliced off, and her ear lobes had been nicked through with a blade. In addition, the killer had made off with her left kidney and her uterus, while a portion of her apron was also missing. On October 16th, George Lusk, the president of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, received a 3-inch square cardboard box in his mail. Inside was half a human kidney, preserved in wine, along with the now infamous Ripper letter that begins, "From Hell." Her fingers bore the mark of several rings, which were presumed lost or stolen. The clues which Evie discovered on the murder scene weeks after the crime were placed there by Jack to bait her, and his messages clearly condemned Jacob for sending his female initiates to the slaughter. The body of Mary Jane Kelly was found at 10:45 a.m. on November 9th at 13 Miller's Court, off Dorset Street in Whitechapel. She was approximately 25 years old at the time of her death. Inspector Aberline was on the scene when the door was forced open and the police filed into the room. A sight of unimaginable horror met their eyes. The wall behind the bed was splattered with blood. On the bedside table was a pile of raw human flesh, and there on the bed itself, barely recognizable as human, was the almost skinned body of Mary Kelly. Mary Kelly was the only one of Jack the Ripper's victims to be photographed at the scene of the crime. Indeed, at first glance, when you see that photo, it is difficult to believe you are looking at the body of a human being, so horrifically gruesome were the injuries that Mary Kelly sustained. There was no evidence that Mary Kelly was wearing any jewelry or rings at the time of the murder. The murder of Mary Kelly seemed specifically designed to unnerve and subsequently reel Evie into her final confrontation with Jack the Ripper. Mary Kelly was the only victim murdered by Jack after he had eliminated Jacob as a threat to his grand work, as his letters so often referred to his butchery. She was also significantly younger than the other victims, and their paroxysm of violence met out on her corpse rang of provocation, especially in light of the message that Evie discovered on the scene. "My gift to you, Miss Fry, and more to come unless you do as Jack says."
Other people?
Mary Ann was the first of the Whitechapel murder victims. Her death was been attributed to the notorious identified serial killer Jack the Ripper. All 5 of the canonical Ripper victims worked in one of the brothels run by a madam called Lady O during the fall of 1888. Polly shared a room with another destitute woman named Nellie shortly before her death. While her estranged first husband identified Miss Nichols' body at the official inquest, Inspector Aberline, who was present at the time, wrote in his unofficial notes that the man had barely looked at the woman before declaring he forgave her for what she had done to him. It was Inspector Aberline who first discovered an assassin's ring on the site of her murder, and posted and posited to Evie that the body of the murdered prostitute could very well have belonged to someone else. An assassin or a spy working for Jacob, perhaps? Elizabeth Longlist Stride is believed to be the third victim of the notorious Jack the Ripper. She was born Elizabeth Gustavsdotter in the Gustavsdotter in the parish of Torslanda, west of Gothenburg, Sweden. Unlike most other victims of the Whitechapel murders who fell into prostitution due to poverty after a failed marriage, Stride took it up earlier. By March 1865, she was registered by the Gothenburg police as a prostitute, was treated twice for a sexually transmitted disease, and gave birth to a stillborn girl on April 21, 1865. An acquaintance described her as having a calm temperament, though she appeared numerous times for being drunk and disorderly at Thames Magistrates' Court, where she gave her name as Anne Fitzgerald, but once called herself Olwen Owers. Although there was not enough evidence for Evie to be absolutely sure Miss Stride was working for Jacob, 2 assassin's rings were found on the scene of the double event, the double murder of Stride and Eddowes that was infamously described in one of the Ripper letters. Catherine Kate Eddowes was the 4th victim of the Whitechapel murders. She was the 2nd woman killed in the early hours of Sunday the 30th of September, a night which already had been the murder of Elizabeth Stride less than an hour earlier. Eddowes, also known as Kate Conway and Kate Kelly, after her 2 successive common-law husbands, was born in Graiseley Green, Wolverhampton, on April 14, 1842. In 81, she was living with her second partner, John Kelly, at Cooney's Common Lodging House, Spitalfields, at the center of London's most notorious criminal rookery. Here she took to casual prostitution to pay the rent. Friends of Eddowes described her as intelligent and scholarly, but possessed a fierce temper, and a very jolly woman, always singing. The 2 assassin's rings found by Evie months after the double murder suggest both Eddowes and Stride were working for Jacob. Perhaps the real Eddowes and Stride survived to live out their lives in some other part of the world, while 2 assassins were buried under their names. Mary Jane Kelly, also known as Mary Jeanette Kelly, Fair Emma, Ginger, and Black Mary, is widely believed to be the 5th and final victim of the notorious unidentified serial killer Jack the Ripper. She is about 25 years old at the time of her death. She was born in Limerick, Ireland, but we do not know if that refers to the county or the town. On arriving in London, Kelly went to work in a high-class brothel in the West End. In early September 1888, when her man Barnett lost his job, Mary Jane returned to the streets. Barnett decided to leave her. At around 2 a.m. on the day of her murder, a witness claimed to have seen Mary Jane Kelly come across Commercial Street and turn down Dorset Street with a powerfully built man wearing a high hat and a dark trench coat, but he wore some kind of covering over his face. Kelly and the man stopped outside Miller's Court and talked for a bit. Kelly is heard to say, "All right, my dear, come along. You'll be comfortable." The couple then heads down Miller's Court. She was never seen alive again. Mary Kelly was murdered and mutilated sometime between 2 and 10:45 a.m. when John McCarthy, owner of Miller's Court, sent Thomas Bauer to collect past due rent money from Mary Kelly. None who entered the room that day would ever forget the horror of what Jack the Ripper had done to her.
We're going to bed.
We just have 2 left.
Thought we were going to bed.
You mean Lambeth? Let's just finish this off. We're so close.
Walk on, stupid nag.
Coming through. I need to stop a murderer. Yep. Mine is more yellow and white, gold. Of course, that was also 20 years ago, so who knows? powering this.
Atta girl. Go on.
Jack prepares for Evie's arrival and eliminates the members of the medical staff with the living memory of his internment at Lambeth Asylum.
Do you do a lot of Jack missions?
This is like the third time. Okay. First was the prologue where we literally...
Killed the victim.
No, we literally tailed Jacob.
He's really bad at looking around, huh?
Oh no, he was aware of us.
Did you still have the covering and stuff so no one knew who you were?
Yeah, he's always aboard on that sheet. No one ever identified him.
Now I must erase any trace of my identity. Time to pay a visit to my old doctor.
Not bad.
Lambeth Asylum. In 1870, a wing of Lambeth Asylum was converted for use as a maximum security psychiatric ward for the violent criminals. The treatments at the rotary chair, solitary confinement, and even the electric chair were common practices in the gold wing of Lambeth. The electric chair worked in some cases where the prisoner was suffering from
Did you say
depression.
gold wing? That's an alternate spelling of jail.
Blah, blah, blah.
The jail wing of Lambeth.
Where the prisoner was suffering from depression. The rotary chair was presented as more of an experimental treatment, as it had no scientific evidence behind the reasoning. Many of these practices only furthered along the violence of the inmates. G-Wing was not the sort of place anyone in their right mind would care to be locked up in the Victorian era. If they weren't violent to begin with, there was little doubt they would be scarred for life within a few months of living among the other outrageous inmate of Lambeth.
I think he's the guy who...
It's time my old nurse paid for her negligence and abuse.
said... Jacob.
Yeah, but he was a boy. I don't know exactly when the timeline is.
What a good surgeon I make. Ah! Who are you? I was once the little boy you had locked up here. And now, I am the Ripper.
So yeah, Jack was here as a boy. But I don't know.
As I once begged for hers.
Stupid, I'm Jack the Ripper. No one can stop me.
Real for me. Director Bradford will be happy to help you raise all mention of my stay in the hospital ledgers.
Gotta go down. Yeah, well, oh well.
The police mustn't find out I was a patient here. Where can I find the director of this madhouse? No one must ever know that I was an inmate here. Time to prepare for Miss Fry's arrival. Let's let the lunatics out for a stroll.
That sounds fun.
The more the merrier.
Dum dum dum.
Silver, don't kill him.